Welcome. This is going to be my first video and what I hope to be a series to kind of be a video commentary on C.S. Lewis's Screwtape Letters. One of his most famous books, and for a lot of people, it's like a gateway to C.S. Lewis's more mature thought. A lot of times, like, you may have been a kid and you read like the Narnia books, and way later you read Screwtape, and that gets you to transition to nonfiction works. And so what I'm going to try doing this to make it a little more friendly for like if you want to travel and listen to it on your phone or playing through your speakers driving is I'm actually hopefully it won't be tedious. I might bail on this, but I'll read the passages that it's covering so you don't have to like read it in advance or anything. It'll make it a little longer, but hopefully that it'll make it a little more convenient too. So what the Screwtape letters are, if you aren't familiar with it, is it's a set of the context is going to be a set of letters, all from one side. So you're like listening to one side of a phone conversation, basically, written by a demon of Lewis's invention named Screwtape to his nephew slash protege, another demon named Wormwood. And Wormwood is the tempter of a demon, and they go back and forth. Lewis sets it up as almost like a bureaucratic correspondence. So I want you to kind of, it's set around the time of World War II, and so I want you to kind of picture like pneumatic tubes in an office building, like flying these messages to different levels of hell's bureaucracy, which C.S. Lewis imagining hell as a bureaucracy kind of tells you a little bit about how C.S. Lewis viewed the world that a bureaucracy would be hell. And so it's a sort of ruthlessness to the whole thing too. They're quite enjoyable. I've been teaching them to my senior honors Bible class for years, and that hopefully they'll be enjoyable. So he gives a little preface to the book, and I'm going to break that down now to kind of get a sense of how it works. So I have no intention of explaining how the correspondence, which I now offer the public, fell into my hands. This is his first paragraph. And he's like, because he made it up. There are two equal and opposite errors into which our race can fall into about the devils. One is to disbelieve in their existence, the other is to believe and to feel excessive and unhealthy interest in them. They themselves are equally pleased by both errors and hail a materialist or magician with the same delight. The sort of script which is used in this book can be very easily obtained by anyone who has learned an act, but ill-disposed or excitable people who may make bad use of it shall not learn it from me. So again, kind of with the fiction, but also in the middle, he kind of addresses sort of like the modern discomfort of demons, and they're like, well, they can work with you either way, either denying their existence, saying there's nothing but the world that we see, touch, smell, feel, and all that. That hell would be quite happy with that. There's also the like, oh, hell is something that you're obsessed over and that you give sort of pride of place in your thought processes. You may not actually literally say I worship hell, but you do things to kind of hedge your bets in that direction because you're so obsessed with it. He would call that the magician kind of approach. There will be a letter later in the book that kind of explores that kind of dichotomy, the magician or the materialist temptations with regard to supernatural. If you, we're not going to go that far in it, but if you do care about the supernatural angles and the Christian tradition and the biblical tradition, something that I think Lewis is mostly aware of and intuits, even if he isn't aware of. There's a great little book by a guy named Michael Heiser called The Unseen Realm. I'll do a little link for that if you're interested. It includes research that have been mostly done post C.S. Lewis writing this, but it's, if you care in that direction there, but that's not going to be what this is about. It's going to be much more about kind of a theology of life and an ethic of living and what Lewis wants to teach about Christianity with the sort of literary technique of literally having it from the counterpoint so that there's a sort of skill to this that makes you slow down and it lets them make jokes about things that would normally be improper to make jokes about, so it's much more readable. It's not over the top serious. So and make serious subjects a little more fun to kind of invert them, and also kind of makes you kind of slow down every once in a while and like, wait, what did I read? And so you can kind of mine the meat of a letter again and again and again by that sort of doubling back process as you read it, which is I think what he's doing, trying to do as an author. But in it, he does have a worldview about hell that's in there, but it's an imagined one because he can't know that much about it. So he says readers are advised to remember that the devil is a liar. Not everything that Screwtape, the demon, the main character of the book, says should be assumed to be true, even from his own angle. So he's saying, like, as you read it, do know, like, this is sort of a nice little author's disclaimer, like, hey, if the stuff I say doesn't age well, it's really the character's a devil. I didn't say it. Screwtape said it. And Screwtape may not even believe it. He might be lying to his nephew about it or lying to himself about it. So it's sort of meant to also make it where you do your own thinking on this, which, as opposed to swallowing everything C.S. Lewis has on every subject, hook, line, and sinker, it lets you kind of arm's length this material and kind of process it more by, automatically being on your guard on it. I've made no attempt to identify any of the human beings mentioned in the letters. They're all kind of mostly kept fairly vague. The main character they call the patient. Uh, but I think it very unlikely that the portraits, say, of Father Spike or the patient's mother, are wholly just. So there'll be one time where he makes fun of the local pastors, and and he slams them, and is like, and he's got a very dark portrayal of them, very cynical ones, and it's a little over the top brutal. So maybe Lewis, penning this was like, it's a little over the top, and maybe no one's just like ridiculous. So let Screwtape be the one at fault. And also the patient's mom is kind of a piece of work, and so this lets them kind of dial that back. There's wishful thinking in hell as well as on earth. So wishful thinking, like, oh, maybe they are this bad. That'd be great. So kind of flip on that to kind of get used to how this whole thing works. In conclusion, I ought to add that no effort has been to clear up the chronology of the letters. Number 17 appears to have been composed just before rationing became serious, World War II era. Then, in general, the diabolical method of dating seems to bear no relation to terrestrial time, and I have not attempted to reproduce it. So it is going to interact with history. You'll have like the declaration of war, what sometimes they call the phony war, and then you'll have the Blitz kind of all be a part of this. The history of European war, except so far it happens now and then to impinge on the spiritual condition of one human being, was obviously of no interest to Screwtape. And you'll see that in letters where C.S. Lewis likes to kind of make you kind of flip around the way you think of things. So what we sometimes make as the most important thing in the world, which World War II might be one of the most epic things that ever happened to humanity, it's kind of a snooze for an experienced tempter here, because what matters more is the spiritual condition of this one human. C.S. Lewis, Magdalene College, Oxford, 19, July 1st, 1941, which is, he's actually penning this in the midst of the Blitz. A full disclaimer on this, even though this is one of the most popular C.S. Lewis's books, and it has a brilliance that's kind of aged fairly well. Every time I read it, I find new stuff to pull out of it. It wasn't his favorite book. He may have had he's an Oxford English professor. He may have felt a little shame of doing something in such a popular kind of form as opposed to highfalutin literature. Who knows? But do have full disclaimer on this, but I like it, so I'm going to do it anyway. And so that's it for the prologue of Screwtape Letters, and next video will cover letter number 1. Thanks.